Good evening and welcome to tonight's Facebook Live, the first one for a few months, and this one is particularly relevant in light of everything that's happening around the world at this point in time. I'd like to talk about the grid from the perspective of the fact that it's a spiritual tool we can all use, no matter who we are, where we are, or how effective we think we can be. Hi Cynthia, hi Clara, hi Anita, thanks for joining me. You know, a lot of people have asked me over the last month particularly, is there anything at all that we can do? Because there's so much going on in the world, and surely if we're working together spiritually, there are always choices, there are always possibilities for actions that we can take. Hi Amanda. So basically, yes, there's always something that we can do. There are always possibilities. We can meditate, we can send pink bubbles, we can do all sorts. Excuse me, I'm just going to turn the fan down on my aircon. How about that? I'm in New Zealand and I'm using aircon. And that's part of what we're talking about tonight. Hi Karen, hi Bronwyn, hi Glynis. We're in a world that's rapidly changing. And it seems no matter where we turn, there's a problem. We've got a choice. We can sit and we can complain about it. We can be afraid. We can send light, we can send love, we can send pink bubbles. We can do a variety of things. All of which, good or bad, is going to have an impact. If we're sending pink bubbles, then we're sending acceptance. If we're sending light, we're sending loving acceptance. One isn't better than the other. But for many people, there's a sense that as good as that is, it's not enough. You know, people have said to me, but I really feel I ought to be doing something more. And ought to be is this, is the head. So I want to talk about it not being the head. Hi Caroline, Orla, Juliet, Elaine, Sonia. Wow, this is good. It's a good group. I don't want us to think about what we ought to be doing, because then it becomes a duty and not a joy. And for me, if we're going to work with spirit, particularly in a world that seems topsy-turvy at the moment, the more joy we can share, the better. So for me, I look at what's happening in the world and I see a world that is changing. I don't see a world that's in trouble, which probably is going to surprise a few people. In John's talk this month, he addresses it. He talks about the planet and the fact that the plates have moved sufficiently now that we're all aware of what's happening. And he covers it in far more depth and detail than I would or will in a conversation like this. Times are changing, and we all want to change mass consciousness, and yet the moment something starts to change, we try to do everything we can to keep it the way that it was. The way that it was hasn't served us well. Yes, there are a lot of things going on. You've got unrest in China because of the coronavirus, in Hong Kong because of the political situation and the coronavirus. In Australia, in New Zealand, we have floods in the South Island and we've got fires in the North Island. You look to Europe and you've got a similar pattern, fire and water, wherever you look. And whether that fire is physical, emotional or mental, it's still present. Anger is fire. If we focus on the fire as a cleanser, then we can collaborate with it. That doesn't mean that we want everything to burn. It doesn't mean that we think we should destroy everything before we can start again, even though we do have the phoenix as our symbol. But it does mean that if we step into our emotional or mental bodies, we fear it or we judge it, we're adding to it. A long time ago, John gave us an exercise called the grid. And many of you join on the 21st of every month to connect to the grid. And every quarter, John comes in, or someone else comes in. We had Sonia do it 1 year, and guides that exercise. And it's powerful. We may not see an immediate consequence. I would suggest that if we weren't doing it, things would be far worse than they already are. The grid isn't just an exercise to do, it's an energy net around our planet. And there are lots of different grids depending on who you follow, who you talk to, what you read, what you learn, what you study. The one that I'm talking about, the grid that John talks about, is a grid for peace and harmony. It's a grid of energy around our world, holding our world together, feeding and enlivening it. And if and when, because it's both, we stand at the intersecting points on the grid and we share our light through who we are into the grid and out into the world, we make an impact. At this point in time, when there is so much going on, standing and connecting to the grid achieves far more, because it's a conscious choice to stand and inject energy into mass consciousness. I don't know if any of you have got any questions, and if you have, type them and I'll be happy to answer them. For me, the grid is a practical exercise. It's not just a monthly meditation. It's something that enables us to feel that we're contributing, that we're giving the gift of our light from our higher self, soul, personality, into the grid and out into the world. In other words, we're connecting and we're claiming that we belong. That's why it's important for me as an exercise, because what I see is a lot of separation, a lot of specialization, a lot of division. The more that we as a group can stand and share who we are without judgment, without duty, just as an opportunity to give something of ourselves back to a world that looks after us beautifully, the more we expand mass consciousness and perhaps shift some of the things that hold it back or create shadows. We do it once a month as a group, as a collective. I don't believe we need to do it every day as a collective, but I do believe that at a personal level, we can choose to do it more frequently ourselves, because that serves an extra purpose, an additional purpose. By doing that, first of all, we're bringing more light into ourselves consciously, because we have to connect it before we share it. So that's always going to be beneficial, because it brings our soul and our higher self closer into communication and communion with us. By doing it personally through the grid, we're standing in light, and we're standing for light at a personal level and saying, this is who I am, and this is what I'm here to share. Do you do it for a particular outcome? No. And that's quite straightforward, really. We don't know what the bigger plan is. All we know is that there is one. Well, at least I assume we all do. That there is one. That there is a plan afoot for all of us as equal participants to have an impact on what's happening in our world. So Amanda is saying, hi Tracy, Amanda's saying sharing light often into the grid seems like a great idea. It does to me. I obviously, otherwise I wouldn't be suggesting it. I think sometimes pink bubbles can seem a bit too nebulous. And as Orla says, are we sharing ourselves or the light of the universe, or is it a bit of both? It's got to be both, because we're bringing in our higher self, the light from our higher self, which is at universal level. It's connected to all that is. So that is connecting to our soul, connecting through our personality and into the grid. We're doing all of it. We are becoming a little chakra point of light, every one of us, each time we do that. And so we literally enlighten our planet. If we say, I want to send this light to the grid and out to this particular place, then we're presupposing we know what's best for that place and for our planet. And I'm going to say, no, we don't. We know what we think might be best. If we stand on that grid, standing in our light, we stand with all that is. And we share unconditionally. We're not selecting a place, we're not selecting a cause or a purpose. We are simply standing, anchoring, and out it goes. And that helps us to fulfill our purpose. No matter what we individually have come to do, we all incarnated as points of light to bring light to our world. And standing on the grid, allowing the light to flow through us out, that's exactly what we're doing. Cynthia says, oh, just one moment, I've got a couple here. Juliet, first, says she's often prompted to do it as soon as she connects with the light of her higher self, and it feels like, and I've got another more, and I can't see, I would imagine it feels expansive. I don't know, Juliet, I'm presupposing, but it's true. Cynthia says, with the earth changing and shifting on a deep level, can this have an effect on the grid? Of course, because the grid holds the planet together energetically whilst those changes take place safely for the planet. I think there's something that we all need to be aware of, and John's spoken of it many, many times. Our world is changing and it will survive. We may not. If we don't collaborate with the changes that are occurring, then the earth will carry on, but we may not. So Juliet's finished what she was saying. It feels a real blessing both ways. It is, because we are being blessed by that light and we're sharing that light as a blessing to other people. I like what Orla said. The less she feels she knows about what she's doing, the more effective it is. Well, in that case, you can't get in your own way, can you? Hi, Sally. Nice of you to join us. So for me, the grid isn't just a meditation. It's a point of service. It's the first point of service because it's a point of standing in light, sharing that light with the planet and with mass consciousness. As the earth changes occur, the plates are moving further and further apart. I don't think I've quite gotten over my surprise when someone told me that Japan moved 3 feet when the tsunami and the earthquake hit. 3 feet is going to have an impact on the ocean floor, and it's going to have an impact on the currents, both air and sea, which is going to have an impact on weather patterns, even without our own thoughts and emotions having an impact. There's thoughtlessness in our world that seems to be the greatest ill. People don't think. There was a news report tonight of a tract of land in Victoria that was cleared, and there were, they think, 500 koala bears, many of whom perished because they didn't clear them out first. They didn't think about doing so. Or perhaps they did think about it and didn't think it mattered. At a time when Australia's species are under threat because of the fires, that kind of thought could make a difference in the long term. So before you step onto the grid, it might also be an idea to stop and ask where you could be more thoughtful in your day-to-day, so that as you stand on that grid, the channel for your light through into the world becomes clearer and clearer. I don't know if anybody else has anything more that they'd like to ask. I'm just looking. Oh, here we go. Yes, Clara, you're right. The grid has the multiplying effect of the light we send, because we stand on an intersecting point and it goes out in all directions. And Juliet says, can we share this with others who might not be part of the JTB community? Of course, the grid is part of the community only insofar as John gave it to us. But it's not a copyright. It's not something that we have to keep secret that's just for the ones that are in the know. Share it. Anything that you know that you believe can be of assistance to others, share. That's a great question, Juliet, because we're not sharing enough if our world is in the condition that it's in. Yes, some of us, it's our business, being a spiritual teacher or a facilitator or a channel, whatever. But that's secondary to the fact that we are spirit, here in action, in a world that's going through turmoil and change and needs all the help we can give it. The more that we share of ourselves, the less that we try to control from ourselves, the more powerful the energy we give to the grid. Okay, any questions, any objections, anything anyone would like to add? I'm seeing a few hearts, that's good. I don't feel quite so alone. Yes, Elaine, I think you're right. Elaine said perhaps more people will be open to the idea now. When people are challenged, they look at things that they wouldn't normally consider. How often as a healer do you know that somebody's been to every medical professional possible before they finally come to a healer? Because there are no more doors left. So yeah, but don't share this from fear. Share it as an opportunity if people want to participate. And they don't have to join the Phoenix Rising group and take part in the Harmony 21. They can do their own grid exercise if they wish. This is not about, well, you have to be part of this before you can be part of that. This is about offering this to anyone that wants to work with it. So, I hope I've given you something to think about as a way to start the year. Because I suspect, based on some of the things that John's let fall, that there are going to be more changes. I don't see it as a negative, and he doesn't talk about it as a negative. There are going to be more changes, and the more we can cooperate and collaborate, the more thoughtful we are and the less entitled we are, the more kindness we show and the less competition we allow, our energy becomes a pure channel for spirit. After all, that's what we're here to do and to be. Keeping it simple? Yes. Yes. Amanda says that's a good steward. I'm really glad, Amanda. And Juliet says, thank you. So thank you all of you for joining me. I'm sorry there was a bit of a confusion about the time, but I think we've got it right now. It will always be 6 p.m. Australia time, 8 p.m. New Zealand time. And I say 6 p.m. Australia time because some people think New Zealand is in Australia. So if I say 6 p.m. Australia and 8 p.m. New Zealand, everybody knows that they're two separate countries. All right, well, thank you for joining me, and I hope to connect to you on the grid regularly. Have fun. Bye.